The new issue of Women's Rights. Should women be made to register with the draft? The news has made a journey about this information along a trail of footprints and breadcrumbs that a bill has passed the House Armed Services Committee, which would mandate the obligation of women to register with the Selective Services System of the United States at the age of 18. The Selective Services System, otherwise known in the U.S. as the Draft Registry, would become a citizenship requirement of adult women no different than what is already expected of adult men. Carried along that kind of inclusive shift of social participation, there are notions about gender equality of which makes for a curious discussion. No doubt, this matter brings forth long pondered but less spoken about issues of rights, women, and the status quo. Some people view this bill as potential momentum towards appropriate measures to achieve equality, but others view it as a detrimental risk to the societal order of the nation. Potentially, the effect of this bill, if it does pass Congress, will have a powerful effect on the culture of the United States as it is known. Primarily, the matter of mandatory female registration into the SSS is a debate of which the essentials center on the biological differences between men and women, as well the ethics about appropriate cross-gender communication that orders society. Common positions are concerned about whether women are fit for the kind of role customarily associated to manhood. Some reasons that are considered about this position, they insist that confrontation of more comparative biophysical challenges than men, i.e., menstrual cycles, pregnancies, and other exclusive biological imbalances experienced by women that might affect their efficiency. The general conclusion is that women are shorter than men, or they are smaller than men, or they are weaker than men, and so they should not be inmixed into this societal arrangement because the quality of military readiness may be affected. The critical concern about the physical reliability of women in the presence of men, can they compete? This is an area of contention on both sides of the sexual gridiron in regard to military service as a mandate for women and the ability to match up against men because women are gaining more ground in their pursuit of equality within society in general. Presumably, there is a heavy numerical faction of women ready, willing, and able to accept and assume military duty, to consider the dilemma of sexual inclusion in service, to make mention about gender separation in military occupations. There is significance in the decision of the U.S. Defense Secretary to open ranks and allow women to apply for combat jobs and frontline positions. The decision challenges the prior Supreme Court decision to exempt women from the draft, with reference to effectual past rulings. Quote, in the legislative history for the Department of Defense Authorization Act 1981, the Senate Armed Services Committee report stated that the primary reason for not expanding registration to include women was DOD's policy of not using women in combat, unquote. Merely, in the question of military gender segregation about physical ability or simply polity. What is more, about the exclusion of women as duly committed military service members, there can be considerable significance found in the notion that Negro Americans gained the right to vote in 1870, and the women of any racial group did not obtain this right until 1920. To exemplify how far apart men and women have been of history and how much has developed over the time in the movement towards gender equality. Emblematic of the changes that have manifested in the advancement of opportunities available to women, last year, 2 women trained and completed the U.S. Army Ranger School and were awarded the Army Ranger tab. They became the first women ever to accomplish such a feat in the special forces of the Army, let alone the military. Not only military to consider politics as of the time that this article is written, Hillary Clinton is a front-runner, the probable Democrat nominee, and possible next president of the United States. Furthermore, with regard to sports, women have their own sports leagues, and some spectators and athletes are hopeful that athletic segregation will soon cease. Moreover, there are more women in corporate management positions than at any time in U.S. history. This is a continued trend revealed in a total analysis of industries. Consistently, it can be trusted. Statistically, women make several cents on a dollar less than their male counterparts in the workforce, although the gap here is smaller than it was in some decades ago. When the conversation shifts to income, the argument rages on, from feminist proponents that they deserve to earn equal pay to the cent. To be clear, primarily the reason for the data correlation of less pay to women than men have to do with the fact that women tend to work different jobs than men and not that they make less for the same job. Whitehouse.gov. In addition, some argue that the wage gap is reflected of the amount of hazard that men are exposed to on the job, where they are more likely to die at work than women. This is to say construction, mining, and military too are more dangerous jobs, and men tend to be the majority in these occupations. Others point to the economic burden that men must shoulder in relation to women in societal gender duties. The factors of financial responsibility of dates, who asks who out, and the marriage proposals are some of the issues that people mention. Women have advanced in many gender duty areas and are too bearing some of the burden, but it is not equally distributed. Better yet, it is not equally accepted. There have been many changes over the years in regard to gender equality, but the process in either direction has been nothing short of a tectonic sway, and one bump in the road of change that is paved in temporality. It is the resistance of the womanhood. Women who take the bold step out on the thin tree limb are ridiculed by their feminine peers. For instance, when the minority of them do propose to their gentlemen or allow the man domestic status, a taboo gesture for a woman to initiate courtship of any kind. However, this presence of women who define equality in terms that are only considered the advancement of womanhood to the careless negation of the qualitative status of manhood, is it not problematic? The men are expected to forward courtship and to be providers still, and that speaks volumes of gender inequity which is effectual to the status of manhood given the current and projected developments of womanhood. There may be lopsided communications of need, and such begs questions. Is there not any burden to men now that women wear pants and shorts as opposed to dresses and skirts and still manage to be hinged to womanhood? The men are unmended of balance to this situation, that they cannot wear skirts or dresses, nor can they recede into domesticity and retire away from social engagement without diminishment of their masculinity. And is there not a profound weight that is carried along the back of men? Have not women become active competition to men in employment instead of dependence on the economy of men? Will women ever vocalize this recognition without the urgence of men? Do women only need equal privileges but not equal responsibility to men? Is this gender equality issue a real problem? Exactly the appropriate antidote to the social ill of gender inequity, this move by the Armed Forces Congressional Committee may prove to be. Sadly, this move too can prove a potential unfair condition to women. One might ask about the opinion of women who are more conservative in this whole deal. Do they belong in the military? What about the voices of those who do not agree with the whole woman's suffrage movement or the feminism theme altogether? Do they exist, or are they partially feminist? Could it be that the liberal, progressive plight of some women is proving to be an infringement on contentment of other women with the status quo, and now it has come to the front door of Cinderella's castle? It can be rested upon, surely, that some women accept their domestic role and are inclined to appreciate their homebound duties within the family structure, more so than are men to any domestic inclination. It may be correct to align a common conception about societal roles that women choose to work for fun and social involvement, whereas men have to work to survive and for domestic acceptance. Culturally, such is expected gender alignment in the United States, and the type of associative occupational correlation between work and home roles among the genders has a name. Interestingly enough, the cult of domesticity, or the culture of true womanhood, is something that very few people are aware existed as an identifiable way of life, although they are products of it in every aspect of their gendered interactions. This is what one thinks about when the term housewife or husband provider are used as associative gender concepts. The CTW is a theory that considers divine family value, of which its origin is debatable but likely biblical. It is of the traditional belief system that associates the place of women to be domestic, private, and dependent on the man. It follows in the system that the place of men be public, social, and economically beneficial to the woman. It is this very coexistence that feminism has been in combat with for about 100 years now, favorable in the perspective of all women. The resistance to CTW is not, by no mere means. Many women oppose the idea of employment outside of the home for sure. They do not wish to be breadwinners. They are comfortable with their subordinate position in the family structure. In fact, they do not view it as a subordinate position at all. They are not only in a conformity with the CTW, but they view it as a form of power. One argument posits that women are the only of the two true genders that can give birth. This act of progeny production gives ground to the argument of the biosocial linkage to the gender role assignments. To be supportive of the biosocial perspective is to believe that the CTW establishes and maintains equilibrium in the structure of family with regard of gender equality, and some would argue that any disturbance to this system, as that of the feminist movement of the 1920s and 30s, is a threat to the sustainability of the family structure. Biosociality has exceeded mere matters of man and women, however, and the fact affects the CTW and equity between genders drastically. As of late, the issues of gender equality has undergone an elemental expansion, and there has been an addition to the struggle of femininity. Some people are split on the matter of transgender equality, which is now a part of the conversation. The many advancements of science and technology can be credited with this new feat. The advanced surgical procedures that, gaining more popularity, allow homosexual men and women to transform their physical bodies into the opposite gender of their preferred identity, and in doing so, there are new gender categories created. Whatever the status quo, the list goes on for the amount of headway that is made and the push towards gender equality, in any case at least, for women. However, there are still many barriers that must be broken down entirely if gender equality is to ever be fulfilled. To that point, the questions remain. What is gender equality? Should women achieve it? Does it involve the balance between the rights of men? All this being said, women may soon be required to join the draft, finally. Indeed, in these curious times, the area of concern must be tuned to the frequency of equal rights for all, whether one is of the position that it is inclined to believe that the progressive rights that continue to be gained by women of ample volume to men is driven along a route of positivity, or that the progress has long intruded its limits of social maintenance. Nonetheless, a watchful eye should be placed on these events to come now. This is no doubt a huge leap, not only for the military, but for all the citizens of this country. Whatever the outcome, Everyone will be affected by the decision. It is the fathers, the mothers, the husbands, the wives, the sisters, the brothers, etc. Although the women will deserve a big welcome aboard, a slight zest of pity, they may just as well need to.